Hi, folks. Well, welcome to session 8 of Applied Ethics Medical Mandates. This was the session I wasn't planning to do, but I decided to add a little bit more to this course. This course eventually will be a full course, all sessions put together in one 2-hour format. I've got to pare it down because it is a little bit too long right now, but I'm very close to submitting the full course and recording it for a continuing education company. With that said, I would like your feedback as to what you think works to make the case against medical mandates and what does not. Did I adequately explain the ethical standards, things like that? And in the first 7 sessions, I made it very clear that it's very hard to say that we should be ethically imposing medical mandates upon people related to COVID disease, whether it's vaccinating, whether it's forcing them to do certain behaviors. And so in order to help further drive that home, one of the things I'll be doing in my course, which I'm about to share with you, is just to discuss analogies. So a lot of the arguments for COVID vaccination, for COVID restrictions can be applied to other diseases because one of the arguments has been from the beginning, if we can just save a single life, we should do these things related to preventing COVID. Or if we can just improve the measures of, let's say, preventing death or preventing long-term disease from COVID, we should do these measures. And I'd like you to think about how those arguments can be applied to, well, other problems. And one of the most ready analogies has to do with obesity. So the data that you're seeing here is from 2020. It comes from the CDC. And the red highlighted areas, these are all the leading causes of death. But the red highlighted areas are the ones that are most often associated with obesity. Obesity itself can cause death, but generally it just causes a whole slew of comorbidities, diseases that are associated primarily with the fact that one is obese. Now, obesity is generally defined as a body mass index of over 30 and morbid obesity over 40. Now, body mass index is not the only indicator. Usually it's taken in context with waist circumference as well. For men, waist circumference over 40 inches. For women, waist circumference over 50, or I'm sorry, 35. 50, pregnancy, that can cause that. But the big thing related to being obese is that it does cause a lot of comorbidities. Now let's talk about heart disease for a minute. It is the #1 cause of death, and in the United States, we lead the world in terms of obesity-related deaths and heart disease as well. And so you can see, and this is just for 1 year, from 1 year. Now we've had COVID, we're going on to our 3rd year. And our total death count, as of the last time I looked, was in the mid 800,000 range in the United States. But per year, and this is as of 2020, nearly 700,000 people per year are dying of heart disease. So by far it outstrips COVID. And you can see COVID was the #3 on this list in 2020. And those are deaths that they're pretty sure are caused by COVID, but you might remember that the CDC recently said, the head of the CDC recently said that they need to tease out the data better because there might be some coincidental COVID disease in some of that death metric there, that the patient didn't necessarily die from COVID, they just happened to have COVID and died. So that number might be inflated according to the CDC. But look at these other diseases that can cause death. Stroke, again, often caused by obesity because of high lipid profiles. Chronic lower respiratory diseases. Diabetes type 2. It is a lifestyle diabetes and associated with a number of factors, but obesity is usually the primary cause. And then nephritis, nephrotic syndrome, nephrosis. Whenever you see that NEPHR beginning to a word, it has to do with your kidneys. and kidney disease is often associated with obesity. So one of the arguments for, again, for the COVID vaccines and other mandates has been, if we can just save one, if we can just slow down the spread, if we can just reduce the overall morbidity associated with COVID, all these restrictions are worth it. And so can't we apply the same philosophy to all diseases? So for example, they've talked about having COVID vaccine passports. And some countries tried to put them in place. There's been a lot of pushback in different countries. So could it be that somebody who's obese would not have a passport to go buy Baskin Robbins or get that double shot latte at Starbucks? Is it possible that you'd have to do regular weekly weigh-ins rather than weekly COVID checks, but weekly weigh-ins with your body mass index and your abdominal girth measured to make sure that you can qualify to buy certain foods? Because frankly, the cost to our country in terms of overall deaths, disability, and also healthcare burden, which is another thing that people have been concerned about with COVID, is associated with obesity, the number one by far. There's other diseases or conditions that we have to look at too. Smoking, nearly getting close to 500,000 per year death rate from smoking. That's almost, well, it is higher than per year for COVID, but that's an incredible amount of deaths. Now we have, restricted smoking, but we still make it available. I'm not for totally banning it, even though I grew up in a household where my parents both smoked around me and I was exposed to a lot of secondhand smoke. Probably didn't help my asthma growing up, admittedly, but I love the smell of a pipe. I've smoked the occasional cigar in my past, even tried a pipe. Not as easy to smoke as it appears. You got to develop a technique, and you don't inhale. It's kind of like Bill Clinton and marijuana. But anyway, smoking. Should we totally ban smoking if it saves even just one? What about drinking? Drinking is associated with 95,000 deaths per year. Let's eliminate alcohol altogether, make it just totally illegal. Wouldn't that help reduce the number of deaths? And think about this, a lot of alcoholics kill other people and they damage children. One of our adopted children, we believe, has fetal alcohol syndrome related symptoms. She's scarred for life because of what her biological mother did. And so shouldn't we totally eliminate drinking if it saves just one? What about drug use? Of course, we have illegal drugs, but we also have opioids, and almost 50,000 people per year die from opioid overdose. And now I'm proponent for opioids for some patients, and definitely they need to be monitored. Some people need them to just get by, but look at the death rate on that. What about driving? Taking almost 38,000 lives per year. Should we maybe just restrict that? Maybe everybody should be driving around in a Volvo. Maybe we should limit the car makes and models. Nobody should be driving a smart car. Well, they're pretty safe actually from their design, but maybe we should, have 50,000 airbags in a car that automatically deploy and put somebody in a bubble when they crash. What about accidents in the home? There's about 30,000 deaths per year in America from accidents in the home. Maybe we should just put everybody in bubble wrap, and they're just not allowed to move in their home. If it just saves just one person, and some of those accidents actually end up not only taking out the person that had the accident, but other people with them. In other words, the same mindset of these COVID vaccination mandates, the mask wearing mandates, etc., can be applied to multiple different kinds of deaths, dismemberments, and disabilities that are caused by various and sundry behaviors that are done by people. The same ethical principles, the same ethical argument could be made related to these things too. Which brings up a couple really good quotes associated with this very principle that I've been talking about. Here's Benjamin Franklin. Any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. Benjamin Franklin. And think about that. We are having our liberties stripped to gain safety. And you can try to get to the point where you have complete and utter safety, but then you would absolutely have no freedoms whatsoever. Here's another quote, Dwight D Eisenhower. If you want total security, go to prison. There you'll be fed, clothed, given medical care, and so on. The only thing lacking is freedom. I think that's a really good quote, and it's analogous to Benjamin Franklin's. We lose liberty through security, and there's kind of a give and take. I'll use another analogy. Our shoulder. Our shoulder has tremendous freedom of movement. It allows us to do so much with our arms because we can reach overhead and we can reach down low. We can throw, we can steer a steering wheel. We can do so many things with our arm. Makes us incredibly able to utilize things in our environment. But with that said, the shoulder, because of its freedom, is also at tremendous risk for injury. And because of that level of freedom, we see this in anatomy, we see this in physics, and we see this in society. And Franklin and Eisenhower got this right. So do you want to impose medical mandates related to COVID? You might want to consider also imposing those mandates for about anything that could potentially kill somebody. And at that point, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Because we are going to be making our very own prisons at that point. So I thought I would conclude with this, and I believe I included this in my last session as well. What is the conclusion of the matter? This is kind of a statement by me. Since there is a lack of evidence that the beneficence-maleficence balance is in favor of a vaccine mandate, and we've looked at a lot of those things in previous sessions, how mandates have actually potentially caused greater harm than the good that they've given. Since the experts and leaders of this country have demonstrated the inability to be consistently right or truthful with the public, and we've looked at a lot of quotes that have changed over time by the similar or same individuals. We have competing interests. We have people in the industry saying one thing and the news saying another. And so since we haven't been able to see consistency in the narrative, that's concerning. Since there are evident coercive tactics utilized by those in power to enforce vaccination, and since the fact that anyone receiving a vaccine is a patient and thus is entitled to patient rights, which includes the right to accept or refuse care, with the full support of the ethical guidelines of the American Medical Association, be it resolved, medical mandates are indeed unethical. And that's all I've got. So at some point, let me tell you what the future holds. This will be one course at some point. It will be with an organization called Summit Professional Education. It will be streamlined a bit to make it fit a 2-hour seminar form. And it'll be in the context of continuing education units that are necessary for therapists and perhaps other medical personnel to maintain their licensure in their various states. Some states require ethics courses, and they usually require like general principles of ethics applied to healthcare, but I wanted to make a course for obvious reasons on medical mandates because it's impacting us now. And I think there's a lot of interest in this particular area. So, and it's a passion of mine, if you couldn't tell. So that will be the eventual thing. thing. But what I will probably do at some point is once I revise it, I will do a special, and it will be a pay-for-view um, conglomeration of all the slides together. So it'll probably be about a 2+ hour seminar. I might even do more slides than I can for my 2-hour CEU course, and then leave it open for question answer and input from the audience. And I'll probably do that via like a Zoom, and I will probably have people just pay me a fee through Venmo. I'd be curious to hear any comments you have on what would you think would be reasonable to ask for such a event. I know 2-hour webinars through the company I speak for generally go for, I want to say it's like $99, something like that. I wouldn't charge near that for my YouTube audience, but putting all this work into it, it would be helpful to get some reimbursement for it. Remember to liking videos helps drive up the likelihood that they'll be seen by other people. Subscription to my YouTube channel. I'm going to keep on putting out stuff. Let's say COVID ended tomorrow. Well, there's a lot of stuff to still talk about, and so I'd appreciate you to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet to my channel, and then supporting. The easiest way for me is Venmo, and that is my Venmo address. And there's a lovely picture of one of my daughters with me on my Venmo. I'm not exactly sure right now how to change it, and it's a nice picture, so I'm going to keep it for the time being. But anyway, John Adamson with Seeking Light. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. I hope you have a great night. Take care. God bless.